in a place where it is appropriate and comfortable for you to do so, go ahead and close your eyes and begin to take some slow, deep, relaxing breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. With every inhale, begin to feel more peace and light entering your body and mind. With every exhale, let go of all tension and anything you do not want. Inhaling peace and light, and exhaling as you let go of all tension and anything you do not want. We picture ourselves on top of a beautiful mountain in the center of a circular grove of trees. In the center of our circle, a bonfire blazes forth, and it lights us and the grove up with a sacred golden light. We recognize that this is the light of perfect love and perfect trust, and it burns away everything that is not like itself, easily and joyously. Into this sacred space, we invoke the presence of our Creator. To many of us here, our Creator reveals themselves as a god and goddess, a mother and father. Into this sacred space, we also invite the presence of our teachers, our guides, and our angels, and we ask that they join with us as we dedicate this time together to each other and to them. That we be guided and led as we walk upon the way, becoming happier, more peaceful, more prosperous, more healthy, and more loving people. Thank you very much. Together we all say, blessed be. In magic, in order to make change occur, it is necessary that we understand that every physical object, every physical experience has an astral equivalent. Everything in the physical world has an astral equivalent. What is the astral? The astral is the world of the mind. There are different levels of the mind, and there are different levels of the astral. So manifesting something in our lives with magic requires that we build an astral double of exactly what we want. And the stronger that astral double is, the easier and more quickly it manifests. We can think of all manifestation in the physical world as crystallized thought. And this also is the same for things that we do not want in our lives. Those also have an astral equivalent, an astral double. So to eliminate things in our lives which we do not want, we must destroy them on the astral in order for them to disappear on the physical. Just destroying something on the physical plane without destroying its astral equivalent means that it just is going to return. And the same thing goes with things that we do want. If we try to create them on the physical plane, they don't last unless we have a form on the astral, which is permanent. We can think of the astral world as the world of thought, but it's also the world of emotion, the world of the symbolic. All of our expectations and all of our beliefs are on the astral. It's really important to realize that everything that we expect, everything we believe, and everything that we imagine, that we have a large emotion attached to, must manifest. And that's why it's really important to understand that we spend a great deal of our time with great interest and emotion thinking about things we don't want, thinking about things that we just don't want, things that we're afraid of, things that we're worried about. In the Bible, there's a line that says, "That which I greatly feared has come upon me." It's trying to teach you that which you continuously think with great emotion is that which you are creating on the astral, and that has to crystallize into experience no matter what. It's just the laws of the universe. So in magic, we recognize that, And that's why all of our spell casting has to do with creating an astral double of what we want. We also call that a thought form. It's so imperative that we learn how to discipline our minds. We must discipline our minds so that we can notice when we're thinking thoughts that contribute to the creation of thought forms that we do not want, and that we can change our habit at that moment when we see ourselves doing that. When we notice that we have great emotion, it doesn't matter what kind of emotion, great emotion while we're thinking thoughts, we recognize that we are in the process of creation. We are in the process of creating things. What happens when people do magic sometimes is they visualize or they speak an incantation, but they don't include the same kind of emotional experiences with their spells that they are already including with those things that they don't want. You talk about somebody that's got a health problem and you give them a healing spell and they do the spell, but they're like a dead fish. They go through the motions. They say these words, they burn these candles, they do all of that. But then when you talk to them about, well, how are you feeling? Oh, it's just horrible, and there's great emotion and it's only getting worse and nothing's gonna, and then they have all of this emotion attached to the disease. And it's really hard and very challenging to try to combat something like a disease with magic if you're not willing to use the same amount of emotion in the healing spell as that which you're already using to keep alive the thought form of the disease. Now, that's not to say that it's your fault that you have the disease. We're not saying that. But we are saying that it's really easy to get hooked into the thought form of the disease because it's already there. And there's already an emotion there. But to change that thought form so that you have a new experience is going to require that you invest the same level of emotion or greater in the new thought form. Same thing with money. Sometimes people say, oh, I have so many money problems and it's just so hard and I need a money spell. And we give them a money spell. And the way they perform the money spell is very perfunctory. They say the words, they maybe even visualize what they want. They burn the incense, they do whatever it is. They write out the talisman, but the building of the new thought form does not include the same level of emotional interest as does the already existent thought form, which is creating the financial distress. The new desired thought form that you're trying to build, you have to at least match that with the same amount of energy that you have for the condition as it exists already. And that can be challenging for many people, and it's understandable. It's understandable. It's hard to get interested in something that's not there. Much easier to be very interested emotionally in something that's already there. But as we learn and are very clear about the fact that everything exists on the astral first, that's the realm of cause, then we understand that the things that are crystallized into our experience already exist on the astral. So to undo where they are on the astral, we have to create a new thought form that has a different set of data. And then we have to feed that thought form with at least the same amount of emotional intensity as what the thought form already exists has. When there are two conflicting thought forms on the astral plane, the thought form with the greater intensity of emotion, belief, and expectation always wins out. I'm going to say that again. When there are two conflicting thought forms in the astral, the thought form with the greater intensity of emotion, belief, and expectation tends to win out. So it's not just enough to just want something, although that's important that you desire it and that you can really plug into that desire. But you have to plug into that desire so that it's got emotional intensity as well as expectation and belief. Or faith is a better word than belief, actually. It's very helpful for you to check in regularly and ask yourself, what am I spending my time thinking about? expecting, and feeling. Because very often we are most active creating thought forms when our minds are just idle. We don't even realize what we're doing. You might be driving. And you know how when you're driving, you're in a state of trance? Just notice what you're thinking about. What is your mind going to? And if there's emotion attached to it, if there's faith attached to it, if there's expectation attached to it, you're actually casting a spell. And we cast so many spells, regardless of our training or lack of training. All of us do. Every human does. We cast so many spells on ourselves and on our environment without even realizing that's what we're doing. So one of the things that's very helpful is to find focus and concentration several times a day. Some sort of a meditational program or meditational discipline is highly desirable if you are really truly trying to change your life through magic. Because what that does is it gives you a facility to focus your thoughts so that not all of your mind is constantly wandering and going off into creation mode without your personal approval, without your personal involvement. You know, our minds tend to go off on autopilot. And a lot of times we don't even realize how much emotional intensity we carry with us as we are feeding these thought forms, which we are not aware are there. So what you can do is look into the physical surroundings of your life, look into the circumstances of your life, and recognize that no matter what it is, there is an astral double of that thing that's being held in place by some sort of emotion. Some sort of emotion. That's your body, that's your finances, that's your relationships, it's everything. And so to go in and actually create something new or to change something that already exists, it's very important that you have a laser-focused thought, emotion, expectation, and faith. Now, we know all about the witch's pyramid. You need faith, imagination, will, and secrecy. We get that. But to actually build that thought form, to actually build that astral double, requires some focus. Because if you just allow yourself to be unfocused, you're just going to be continuing to create by rote. And then you're just going to get more of what you already have. Now, on the level of the group mind, there's many group minds. There's a species mind. There's a mind of all Americans. There's a mind of all Republicans. There's a mind of all Democrats. There's a mind of all white people. There's a mind of all black people. There's a mind of all gay people. There's a mind of all trans people. There's a mind of your community. There's a mind of your family. There's a mind of your gender. Whatever groups that you're involved with all have group minds. They all have group minds. And those group minds have thought forms attached to the group minds that are creating results. Allowing yourself to notice when you are being hooked into the group mind to create along with everybody else. And also when that group mind comes up against your personal goals, when that group, whatever the group mind happens to be, comes up against your personal goals. I've seen that with people that call themselves witches. There used to be, I don't know that it's so much there as much as it used to be, but there used to be this thought form that with everybody that identified as a witch couldn't have financial prosperity. There was no such thing as a rich witch. You had to be a poor pagan. That was a very prevalent thought form. And I had to very diligently focus my mind to eschew those ideas so that I didn't get pulled into that particular thought form. Now, like I said, that thought form has changed quite a bit since the old days. But one of the ways I think it got changed was individuals stood up against it and said, no, I'm still identifying as a witch, but I do not put myself into that thought form that I must be financially poor. You know, poverty and witchcraft do not go together. And so it took diligence for many of us in that community to rise up into financial prosperity and calling ourselves witches, right? But over time, that also, I think, helped free the group mind of that collective. So all of that to say that it's not just your personal mind that you're dealing with, that you're also dealing with different group minds, different collective consciousness ideas. and that you have to allow yourself to detach from the group mind oftentimes. And that can take some courage, because many times we find solace in our groups, which is one of the reasons why it's important to have community, is that we find solace when we need it. We find support when we need it. We come together for really positive reasons. But if you don't also recognize that there's going to be limiting beliefs within that group mind also, if you don't recognize that, then you're going to easily succumb to the problems within that group mind. And there's always going to be problems, because that's what being a human in three-dimensional reality is all about, is problems and overcoming them. So when you're building your astral equivalent, when you're building your astral double, you have to take into account the fact that you are oftentimes having to come up against thought forms that negate what you say you want, and that takes sometimes great diligence, great focus, and great courage to go up against that. You can change your thought habits. It's habits of thought that tend to create the results over time, and you can change those habits. You oftentimes may believe that it's impossible to change your mind. It's impossible to change your thought habits, that it's just the way it is. But you can prove yourself wrong. And one of the ways that you can do that, like I said, is to find a daily practice, a daily discipline where you can focus your mind, even for just a few minutes a day. I love my technique called the magic minute, just because it's so simple, and you can do it in as little as 60 seconds a day. You can definitely increase your time. But I love that. It's a type of mantra meditation, and it's just so simple. And if you can do that every day, once or twice a day, what you're doing is you're priming your mind so that you can choose the thoughts that you want to think, that you can choose the astral thought forms that you want to build, rather than just doing them by rote, but like a robot. And then you can ask yourself, what do I want? And what in my life don't I want? And if there's something in my life that I don't want, what's the astral double there? And how can I take responsibility for that astral double, even if that's not necessarily my creation? Maybe it was created, along, like we said earlier, with a group mind of sorts. So you have to be able to take responsibility for the fact that you've got that thought form. And then you have to learn to create a new thought form in its place. You just have to be willing to be patient with yourself to do that. You don't fight with yourself. You don't fight against your mind. You don't fight against those negative thought forms. You stay focused. You need to just notice when you're indulging in these thoughts and emotions and expectations of things that you don't want, and just choose a new thought. Just choose again. It's good to have one thing that you're working on at a time. Notice what you're thinking in regards to a certain thing. So, for instance, building a thought form about that financial situation. Somebody was talking just today, I have all these debts, I can't pay my debts, what do I do? What do I do? One thing that you need to do is look at your thought form that is attached to the debt. What is the equivalent thought form attached to the debt? And we give you all kinds of processes. You can ask yourself questions about that thought form. What do I think about these debts? Why do I have these debts? What kinds of thoughts about myself do I have in regards to these debts? You can ask yourself questions. You can find out all you need to know about that thought form just by asking. Then when you say, well, what would I rather have instead? Then you come up with your own ideas, your own visualizations, your own thoughts. We have all kinds of courses that teach you how to build these thought forms. But then when you're going throughout your day, as you are building that thought form, as those fears come up from the old thought form, because those two thought forms cannot coexist, you have to be disciplined in recognizing that you have a fear or a negative thought or negative expectation, negative emotion about your debts based on that old thought form. And you have to find the discipline to pivot and to change over to the new thought form so that you can give it the love and it the attention so that it can then take the place of the old thought form. It's a discipline. It's a discipline, not allowing ourselves to indulge, noticing when we are indulging in feeding that old thought form and saying, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're feeding the new thought form now. Right? And then you have baked into your spell usually some sort of an affirmation or some sort of a statement, something that you can key yourself into feeding into that new thought form as you go about your day. The other thing that you can do to help yourself along is noticing how you think as you're falling asleep and how you're thinking as you're waking up. Those times of the day, as you're going to sleep and as you're waking up, are both times where your deep mind is vulnerable, but also when there's a great amount of opportunity to create new results. So if you don't notice what you're thinking as you're falling asleep, and you're just letting your mind do whatever, then the thought forms which are already in existence will get reinforced as you fall asleep. And as you wake up, if you don't really notice what you're feeling or what you're thinking, then those thought forms will just be reinforced because they're the ones that are already there. So instead, you have to bring that new idea. Again, you can distill it down to a single idea, a single thought. For instance, all my financial needs are now met at every moment of time and point of space. Just something simple like that you can say to yourself like a little incantation over and over again on a loop as you're falling asleep. And then when you wake up, what's the first thought you're thinking? Oh, let's choose a new one. All my financial needs are met at every moment of time and point of space. I'm bringing that thought into my mind as soon as I can think of it as I wake up. And just those 2 times of day in and of themselves will carry a great amount of power in regards to building and changing your thought forms. Just noticing what the thought is that you're bringing into your sleep and the thought is that you're bringing out of sleep with you. And also, what are the emotions that I'm bringing into sleep? And what are the emotions that I'm noticing that I'm coming out of sleep with? And then conjuring those new emotions that I desire, putting a great deal of emotion into the new thought, into the new idea. What am I expecting? You can do all of these wonderful spells, even with a great deal of emotion. Like all my debts are being paid, all my financial needs are being met. And then how am I going to explain why I can't pay my bill when they call me today? You're expecting the opposite of what you just cast your spell for. No, you've got to expect that you're going to be able to tell those people, oh, no, I've got money coming in and I can afford to pay you this much and this much and this much. That's where your expectation needs to be, is that you're going to pay those debts, that those debts are going to be taken care of for you. Even if you don't know how, you expect that they will. You expect that they will, not spending your time expecting, oh, what am I going to do when they call and I tell them I don't have the money? No, you're going to tell them that all is well and everything is working out and that these things are getting paid right on time. That expectation, that faith, that emotion, and those ideas are what we need to learn how to change. And that's how we build those thought forms and keep them changed. That's the idea too, is sometimes we're good at building a thought form even. It's like, whoa, yeah, I can see that thought form, that it's built. But then it goes up like a balloon and it goes away. We don't anchor that thought form into actual new thought habits and being diligent with ourselves to not allow ourselves to go back to those old habits of thinking anymore. We are going to be very diligent about this new idea, this new thought form. We're not going to allow ourselves to complete one negative statement in regards to whatever it is that we are building this new thought form for. We're not going to allow ourselves to complete one negative statement without reversing it. We are not going to allow that old thought form any airtime. And when it does get some airtime in our day, we are going to notice it, we're going to recognize it for what it is, and we're going to reverse it immediately. We have to learn to be very diligent in keeping our ideas as we want them to be and not falling back into old habits of thought. You got to change your mind to change your thought form, but you have to keep it changed in order for that thought form to stay permanent. You have to keep it changed. Pretty soon it'll stay changed forever just because you've given yourself enough time. But you have to recognize that it's not just enough to cast a spell and say, well, let's hope for the best. You got to keep your ideas changed. Be very diligent that you're going to keep your mind changed. You can do all of this. Yes, you can. It's not difficult like we think it is, but it is very different than what we're used to. It's very different than the ideas that we've been accustomed to thinking. And so we have to be comfortable with that which is new and that which is different. It's going to be different for you to experience your life as a financially prosperous person than it is for you to experience your life as somebody that's always in debt. It's a very different experience. And if you think that change is unsafe, then you're not going to want that. You're not going to want that, even though you say you do. So you have to allow yourself to be okay with change and being different than you were before, being a different person than you were before. Because those new thoughts, let's just stay with this debt thing, those new thoughts are going to always inspire different actions than what you're used to. You're not going to just buy the thing on your credit card. You're not going to do that anymore. You're not going to just say, oh, well, it's okay. I'll find a way to pay for it later. If that's old thinking. That's old poverty thinking. No, this new thought form says, no, we only pay cash for that. This new thought form says, no, we don't. We only put that on the credit card so that we can get the points, but we're going to go home and we're going to actually pay for it. We're not going into debt anymore. That new thought form is a new life. It's a new way of being. It's a new way of acting. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be all right with the fact that it's different. If you're not okay with the fact that it's different, you're not going to do it. You're not going to accept the new thought forms. In order for us to have change in our life, we have to build an astral equivalent. In order to keep that astral equivalent, we have to keep those new ideas alive. We have to accept the new ideas in favor of the old ones. In order for the old thought form to die, we have to be okay with things being different, not only in our minds, but in our behaviors and in our lives. You would be surprised at how many times people, when they do something like a money spell, when the money starts to come and things start to work out for them, it's so different that they just recoil and they go back into their old thinking. So we're not going to be like that. We're going to be very astute witches and recognize that in order for us to have what we desire, we have to be able to live within that new thought form. And that new thought form is going to be very different than the old thought form. And that's the point. That's the point. Change is happy. Change is good in this respect. And we have to make friends with that change and be willing to live in the new thought form. Everything in your life has an astral double. Has an astral equivalent. If you want something new in your life, you have to create a new astral double for that which you want. And then that new astral double will destroy the old astral double of what you don't want. And then you have to be comfortable living that new life and keeping that thought form alive by keeping your mind changed. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I so appreciate you. Until next time, blessed be.